Oh goodness. Hello, everyone. Let me get the ad that's just decided to start playing on my machine as I'm here. How do I close that down? Wouldn't be a VR download or VR Gamescast if we didn't have massive
You know,
technical
you know
glitches.
it wouldn't. It really
Yeah,
wouldn't.
so
I mean,
hello everyone, and thanks for giving us your time today for VR Gamescast. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by Don Hopper, or a simulation of him. I think he looks like a replicant or an empty shell. What was it from the
yeah,
Sixth
something like that.
Day? Or
Yeah.
if you saw Alien Rogue Incursion, one of the synthetics. I think that's what he looks like this week. Even though I see Don as Don actually appears, I don't think he appears that way to all of you. I'm wearing Quest 3S. No, I'm wearing Quest 3. I changed at the last minute. And Don here is also in a Quest 3. As we appear here today as last generation avatars, well, at least I
No,
do.
I mean, I got you. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're in the VR studio built by David Heaney. It is November 5th, 2024. And to all our American voters out there and our global friends, we will certainly remember the 5th of November and the treason that will never be forgot. They're
Yes.
using hand tracking and the built-in microphones today, and we've got tablets in front of us to see live comments from YouTube during our broadcast. Beck is out there in Canada broadcasting this show for us today. And as I was talking to Beck before the show, I found out she's never heard of Demolition Man. So I'm
What?
going to look to our commenters here to spoil the entire plot
Oh,
of Demolition Man and the most memorable bits for Beck there in our comments. Yeah, and I'd like to send a sincere thank you to our members and patrons for directly supporting the work we do here. In particular, I want to say thank you to Mike Manzano, HoloNet, Podum, that's developer Smash Drums, as well as XR Developer News. Don, what do we have today?
well, Ian, we have another great show planned as usual. So I think, the big news of today is obviously what we're going to talk about at the end. That is Metro Awakening and my time in the tunnels under Moscow. But, I think because that's going to probably take up a lot of time, we'll probably keep the subjects a little lighter and just, more focused on chat interaction today. So I think we'll kick everything off by you're going to give a rundown of kind of some behind the scenes stuff of the making of Batman Arkham Shadow. And then I think we'll shift gears and talk about something that really blew my mind, and that's Gorilla Tag coming to PSVR 2, but not getting crossplay at launch with Quest. And then, of course, we'll go into the main event for today, which is our breakdown of the Metro Awaiting review that I just dropped on the site this morning or this afternoon. So let's kick it off. Tell us about the making of Batman Arkham Shadow.
Yeah, so this was a cool story that emerged because Henry Stockdale, in his review, he was getting late into the game there, and he pulled out a newspaper that's there late in the game. So I'll try to avoid spoilers, just like we did in our article as we get through this. But there's newspapers throughout Batman Arkham Shadow to tell you or mirror the events in the game as it progresses through the story. And the last newspaper here shows off Rescue Vision, and it was a cool little in-game item. If you haven't seen it, or go check out the article that we've got on it down in the links. You've got a little diagram in the bottom left-hand corner that looks like concept art for this VR headset with a glove attachment as well to signal or interact with the headset. And there's an article written all the way down by one of Camouflage's people. Or actually, the whole page. That's what this whole article is breaking down. This single page that you pull out at random times and it's going to be unnoticed by a lot of the people who play the game is actually it touched a lot of hands on its path to actually getting in your hands as a game player, and it was really wild to really unfold that process with them. So I talked to Ryan Payton, the head of the studio over there at Camouflage, as well as the basically director of the game,
Mm-hmm.
because that's his role in charge of the company. And he told me that they have 75 people at Camouflage working on this game currently. That means they've got a couple more months here at least to continue adding to Batman Arkham Shadow to improve some of the features and fix some of the problems that were in it. But the thing that I really unfolded with him that was it was I'm curious if our commenters have any kind of can have any kind of anecdotes they can add to this, but what I noticed was a similarity in how we do our work and the way they do their work. And that sounds a little
Okay.
weird to compare what a journalism outfit to the way a software development firm operates. But the reason that I noticed this was uh, Ryan Payton mentioned that early in the pandemic, he went to visit people in Japan, friends and family in Japan. And he noticed that while he was there, he was using the time difference of being in Japan to focus and be super productive when all of his other coworkers are offline. And I thought that was absolutely
Okay.
fascinating.
Absolutely.
That's the mirror to the way we've done things. So we've had staff in Australia, we've had staff in England, we have David Heaney, obviously,
Hmm.
as well as Henry Stockdale, both over there in the UK. And I'm always seeing it in our comments. It's one of the reasons I love hearing all the places that people are watching us from because uh, there's people waiting for their tests to be graded, so they're tuning into our weird animated show and trying to turn off the news and go to a happy place and hear about all those things. But it's all over the world. Doesn't matter what time of the day. Like, and the fact that the time of the day can affect your mental state. Like
It really can.
you're relaxing, you're really amped up and wired, and really like it all depends on whether the sun is out or whether you've got coworkers really ready to bite your head off because you've got to provide something for them in 30 minutes, or you've got a good quiet 4 hours in the middle of your day when nobody else is going to essentially disrupt your train of thought. And that's what I heard from Camouflage, from Ryan Payton, was he started to use this to his advantage over there in Japan. And he ended up moving there. So he lives in Japan now. And they've got people in Japan, the UK, New York, and Seattle. And he described this process where they had 4 years to build Batman Arkham Shadow. And 3 years into production, they had a fully playable build from start to finish. And as they were looking at it, they realized they had a cool game, but it was missing a bunch of those little touches, exactly like the one I've outlined, this little newspaper. And so they had to figure out, how do we inject this game with a whole bunch more of Batman mythology, of Arkham series mythology, bring up all these things that people love from the whole series. And so they changed around their whole production process where he would have a meeting at one time of the day for just story bits to go over with fellow writers on the project. And then he would go through his day and do a whole bunch of other things. And then he was saying that he gets up at 4:30 in the morning Japan time in order to intersect his schedule with a bunch of people in other places for this purpose. And from this story meeting that they would have, they would come up with a whole bunch of new things to add to the game. And then at the end of his day, he would do a playthrough of the build that has arrived onto his server that he's pulling from, and then install a new version of Batman Arkham Shadow to play through. And he would cast his view to a PC. And then from the PC, there would be a video call to other people in other offices. So they're now seeing what he's seeing. And then there's a person sitting there as he's going through the gameplay and marking off, making notes on everything he's playing. And he said that on a daily basis, they would come up with 200 to 300 notes. It was like 100 to 300 notes to hand off to the development team to work through an update in the next 24-hour cycle before he gets a new
That's
build of
amazing.
Batman Arkham Shadow to download to his headset and repeat the whole cycle the next day. Get up early, do one meeting, late, do another meeting. And I love this story so much
Oh, it's so
because,
great.
yeah, I'm convinced that uh, one of my favorites out there, obviously Mighty Coconut, Walkabout Mini Golf, they have a global remote
Hmm.
development staff. 35 people is, I think, the last number I heard for that team. But it's the same sort of deal. How do you manage production when you've got people living in every time zone on Earth and they need to work in a way that works for them? How do you hand off things in a timely fashion to the next person on the list without holding everyone else up? One of the things we do at UploadVR is I encourage everyone to CC emails to someone
Hmm.
else on staff as often as possible, so that if someone responds in the middle of Pacific time and you're sound asleep over in England time, the person in the Pacific time zone or the Eastern time zone can respond to the person who
Hmm.
also wants that response in, same day. Little things like that are all over the place, and it goes to the very core of this work from home, remote work versus back to the office headbutting that's happening, where if you have a bad boss, you have a boss that needs to see the fear in your eyes when he yells at you or she yells at you. Um, that's not going like they're going to demand you come back to the office, right? Like they're going to need to see that emotional reaction for some ridiculous reason in order to get the job done. And I always think of how what a failure that is of imagination, of
Oh, absolutely.
organizing a team in order to not align your team and just let their work surface on an appropriate time scale for them. So yeah, I did this article, it's about 1,400 words over there from Ryan Payton and a bunch of the team members there, outlining how this little newspaper went from these this realization 3 years into a 4-year production process that, oh no, we actually need to inject this game with a whole bunch more of Batman and Arkham Shadow and just the whole series. And even the item itself, this is a really cool thing, Rescue Vision. It's obviously Detective Vision
Hmm.
is an Arkham series staple. The ability for Batman to kind of see where the bad guys are.
That's one
And
of my favorite things in the game. I love detective vision.
so
So
this newspaper, let's see if I can pull it up here and override back because it should be in the assets here.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say, I think that's in your article there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll throw it up here. So this is the newspaper
Yeah, there
here,
we go.
and Henry Stockdale put this in my DMs while he was going offline one night over there in England, and I'm like, wow, this is really, really cool. So one concept artist looked at the 1980s versions of VR headsets that
I was
existed
about to
at
say
NASA.
that's a VFX1. I have one of those.
So he looked at some of this stuff and designed this based on the Power Glove, and they wanted it to look
Yeah.
retro futuristic. They had another person who laid out the page. They had a room set up for Peyton to test out the physics of holding this newspaper in different places and being able to flip it over and look at the backside. And then there's this narrative element that they had to inject in here, where what is it? Lucius Fox, the
Hmm.
head of Wayne Enterprises, says that the company has no interest in weaponizing this technology. So this VR headset technology that's based on Batman's Rescue Vision, or sorry, it's based on his Detective Vision, and it's being called Rescue Vision. You flip the newspaper over, it says Rescue Vision at the top of this, and there's an article written by one of the writers for the game explaining this in-game idea. And in this room that Peyton said he had a bunch of newspapers where he could test out different versions of this newspaper and
Okay.
see which one had the right amount of text clarity, which one had the right physics for grabbing the paper in different positions. And that's another, like, this is such a small piece of the game, right? If you
Oh, it
think of
is.
them getting 3 years into development and then realizing we got to add stuff like this in
Well,
order for this game to be fully rounded out, you can understand the level of stuff that's needed in these games to really make
oh
them
gosh,
sing.
absolutely. I mean, full of detail that Riot Camouflage has put into this game, and just little nuances and things like that that you catch in the newspapers and just things laying around. It's amazing, and getting to go to their studios and actually see them work. I mean, because I did actually get to go out and visit Camouflage at the Meta Studios, and just to see them work, and like you said, just the way that they did this and the way that they pulled this together with a global team is a testament to that studio's resilience. I, so bravo. And I'm sorry, I'm just old school. I not quit looking at them because I love old headsets, and they really nailed the aesthetic of the late 80s, early 90s headset here. So that is just fantastic. And okay, so I
Could
guess we should probably real
could
quick address. Um, no, go
It's
ahead.
also your audio. Could you drop out of the studio and come back and just close the studio and come back? Oh, we don't know what's going on here. He's apparently looking. It sounds like a robot to me, even though he looks like Don to me. He's got his full avatar skin. He's also sounding like a robot now over the last minute or two. Goodness, the things we always have in VR. Wow. I love that you guys all get to experience this stuff with me. The one that always really bothered me is it's happened a few times where the only thing that loads are my hands, and I'll look forward and see my hands here in VR, and it's just the black void of existence outside of that. So let's see if you're back,
Can
Don.
you
Do you
hear me
sound any
now?
better?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think you're better
You can
now.
hear me. Can the audience hear me?
Yeah.
So maybe we should take a minute to address this, because like I'm seeing a lot of comments, and hopefully they can hear me talk about this. So the only theory that we have going on right now, and it's an exciting theory for me, is that I noticed that this morning my headset got an update and I am on V71. So maybe, Ian is on V69 currently. I'm not sure, if that affects David's studio or not, but that's the only theory we can think of here, guys, as to why I have become Gradon. But that sounds cool. I think that's going to become like my new fantasy name. Like from
Gray
now
Dawn.
on, I'm just going to be Gradon. You know,
Yeah. Great
Great
on the
on the
terrible.
wise, or great on the terrible. Oh, I see. I say wise. You say terrible. See how this is, guys. See what I have to endure with on a daily basis here.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, Don.
No,
Well,
I'm just messing with you. So
I want to say hi to Davin Bigelow, Ryan B.
absolutely,
Let's see who else we got
you got
here.
Mineweaver. Let's
A lot of
see.
regular viewers, and also Mr. Mycelium and Arlen there at the beginning of the show. I want to say also hello to all the silent viewers out there.
Yes,
We know you're out there, and when I mention you, speak up, as well as our audio listeners. We've got a lot of people starting to tune in on the podcast. Um, and I appreciate all the people that are playing through Arkham Shadow slowly but surely, and I really thought this was a cool bit of lore to kind of
yeah.
unfold and see this non-weaponized like even this whole idea is mirroring a lot of what we cover at UploadVR, what we think about long term,
Oh
right?
yeah.
This is a little bit analogous to our real world and the way VR headsets with AR pass-through features will have massive effects over the long term, giving people supervision and other people without supervision. What does that look like? All right. So, have you been watching The Lord of the Rings over on Amazon? Yeah.
Okay, watch the first season. I have not watched the second season yet, because I am
Much
like
better than the
right now
first,
I
I
am in
thought.
an anti-show hole. I've got so many shows like Star Trek Lower Decks has started back for its final season. Loving that. If you are a Trek fan, it is a true gift. So please check out Lower Decks. But yeah, it is definitely on my radar. I love me some Lord of the Rings. So,
Yeah, you made me
but
think of Don the Gray there, and I
Don the Gray.
apologize for saying
Yeah. No, it's
Don the
okay. Yeah,
Terrible.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. No, I'm just messing with you. But so anyway, but yeah, so again, guys, sorry, I am Gray Don here. Gray Don the Wise, the Terrible, whatever we're gonna call me today. But it is just a weird glitch, because we are seeing me correct in the studio. So for some reason you guys are seeing me as this weird avatar, but at least you can hear me now. And hopefully you guys were hearing what I was saying earlier. I was just kind of waxing a little bit, Ian, when you were cutting out, about how I really really loved the aesthetic here of the headset as a collector of old headsets, as someone who got the VFX1, which is, I think, what this is patterned off of. A lot of people don't know that history. Back in the late 90s, we had two competing headsets. And just like we did in the early days of consumer VR, we had the eyeglasses from IO Display System, and we had the VFX1 and VFX 3D later from Forte Display Systems. And those were kind of the rift and the vibe of their day. And so this one would have been what I considered the vibe of its day. And it now sits on my Yoda doll, as some of you might have seen. But that's a good question. Sampler 19's asking, why does Batman only have 84 on Metacritic?
Yeah, we rated it really high. We
We
gave it a
did.
very high rating. Henry really adored it, and then we'll talk here at the end about the other big one that people have been expecting, which is
Oh,
Metro
yeah.
here. So Don just reviewed that one, played it through, and I'm loving the people's talking about the different shows that they're into out there.
Mhm.
Strange New Worlds, talking about that, as well as Jay Ritchie giving another
Oh, God,
support of
I can't wait.
Ring Rings of Power season 2. I want to put a call out there for anyone that has not seen the last season of The Orville
Yeah.
over on Disney Plus, I think is where it is right now. The most recent season of The Orville is some of the
Oh,
best
yes.
Star Trek you can watch, even though it's not Star Trek, right? It's not. It's
It is. It
toned
is Next
down
Generation
humor
2.0.
wise.
I mean, God, that show started as like Family Guy in space for season 1, and then became everything I wanted from an eighth season of Next Gen.
I think it's
So
called New Horizons. I think they changed the name of the show
yeah,
even to
they did.
I have a tweet out there where I demanded, I wanted 4 more seasons from Seth MacFarlane and Disney to show up and pay him, and Seth MacFarlane retweeted and said he was game, he was ready for it. And then of course, where is that,
You
right?
got retweeted by Seth. Well,
Yeah, I got that one got noticed by
did,
the creator, and
have
nothing has
you done
happened.
the? Did you ever Orville experience on Steam, the VR where you can walk through
No,
the
I
ship?
hadn't seen that one.
Oh, you should go check it out. It's kind of like the Stage 9 thing, the Enterprise D recreation, but you actually get to explore the entire ship. And I'm pretty sure it's a free experience that you can still download on Steam. Just if you don't have PC VR, just hook up your Quest on Link. And if you're an Orville fan, there we go. We tied it back to VR, so we're not just talking about TV shows today.
I love
But
that. Well, I'm not seeing enough people in the comments explaining the 3 seashells to Beck out there, but
she
I would
needs to know
expect
about the
them all
three
to.
seashells. I
Yeah, she
mean,
needs to
it's
know how those
important.
work.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to this next subject. Probably won't be
Okay.
a long one here. Where why don't you break this down for us a little bit, Don?
So yeah, Gorilla Tag. Gorilla Tag, probably the most popular game out there. I mean, in that genre, seeing millions of users, is now coming to PlayStation VR 2. But as our reporting this week came out, it is going to be on PSVR 2, but it is not going to support cross-play multiplayer at launch, and the initial release is only going to be US based. So unfortunately, folks, if you are across the pond, if you're not here in the continental, you're probably not going to be able to play Gorilla Tag right off the bat, and you're not going to be playing it with any of your friends on Quest until they get that support in there. So it is a phenomenon. I mean, this game, I mean, we've talked about it before. The simplicity of this game, it just exploded. And I'm still, to some ways, and maybe that's just because I'm an older guy, I still scratch my head over it. I can't play it for very long because, Jesus Christ, I get tired. Just with that movement system. But I mean, the game has over 1 million daily active users, 3 million monthly active users, and 10 million lifetime players. So they're definitely onto something with this game.
Yeah, I would say that is tag, right? Like that is the thing they are
Yeah.
onto. And you go down the list of things. I've brought it up multiple times in multiple shows. Make sure you tune into VR Download on Thursdays as we talk with David Heaney about the larger trends in the space. But go down the list: tag, mini golf, watching movies, full golf. all the activities that you would enjoy in the real world are getting replicated in VR to massive success in the
Mhm.
various places where they kind of nail everything just right. One of the things I was wondering about is whether this lack of crossplay, at least initially, helps. People in our comments are suggesting maybe there's some gameplay differences because you can't 360 so easily. You
Well,
can't turn around.
yeah, I mean, cable. I mean, that's like a lot of people are bringing it up, and that's the first thing that I thought of, Ian, when I read this, and I'm like, I started thinking of the mechanics of this game and how physically active and how much you spin around in it. I I have been spoiled. We have been off the wire for a long time, if you think about it now. I
Yeah.
mean, we both started in the beginning where everything was wired, everything was seated. And get a good swivel chair and make sure that you've got a hook system in the ceiling, otherwise you're going to get tied up. And for that, I bring that up because if you are a PSVR 2 player and you are new to the ecosystem, some people don't think about those things. They don't think they've never had to deal with a wired headset. So a couple of things, pulley systems, I mean, there are lots of companies out there that sell pulley systems that are specifically designed to just hook up in your ceiling. A lot of them are no friction. You don't have to drill holes. They just, use command style hooks, but it'll put your wire up in the ceiling above your head. That way you can freely move around in your limited play space, and not have to worry about choking yourself on a wire or tripping on it. So, there is that for those people who are concerned about playing this. I do love Daniel Leeper though. Mom, I've ripped the cable out of my PSVR 2. I think we're going to probably see some broken USB-C ports. We're going to see some, it's going to be interesting to see the amount of damage that Gorilla Tag could cause in an average living room on a wired headset. For
Yeah, I'm seeing people talk about all the pulley systems really responding to some of the people that have experimented with things out there.
Mhm.
I'm a big believer now in wearing a pack, like a bag, on my person if I really
Yeah.
need to manage a capture card or capture a battery pack, as well as just the Apple Vision Pro is out there with. Um, the Apple Vision Pro is out there with a built-in battery pack where you've got to kind of have that on a strap as well.
Hmm.
And Beck threw up an image here, and I've messed with some of these types
Okay.
of
Yeah.
things where you have a break. So I guess this is what Beck uses, one of these breakaway cables, and it's cool until it disconnects on you because it's running through a like a data connection, right? Like it's useful to not have those. Useful to have that, to have it break away, but also if you've got a data connection going over one of those, that would be a bummer to
Yeah.
to lose what's over there.
Well,
But
and
yeah, I've got every one of these. I would love to do a show where we just run through all of our accessories that we actually use day to day because,
that would be
like,
interesting.
yeah, I was just looking at it today. I've got a little USB hub that's about this long. It takes power on the one end, the far end of it, and then on this side it's just four USB-C ports, and then on the top end is a long, like 4 foot or 2 foot um, cord to go up to the headset. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect for seated Quest 3 or Quest 3S play.
Hmm.
But because the hub sits right next to you on the chair, it's the
Yeah.
perfect length to go up to the wire. And then the latest thing on the 3S, right? The 3S lacks a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. It doesn't have the headphone jack. So you need a hub of some kind in order to have wired audio to your 3S.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was reading comments, and Mr. Mycelium looking at Don's gray avatar is like that scene from Goldmember where he can't focus on the conversation because of the mole's mole.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yep.
I'm sorry about the gray avatar, guys. I can't help it.
Yeah, at least we've got something today. We got him in his gray outfit to distract you from all the happenings in the world. We
There you go.
understand that this is an
I'm being
escape.
gray for the world today. There you go. I'm taking in all the gray from everyone in the world. I'm empathically just taking it in. So send it my way, and
Y-
everybody just breathe. we're going to get through it.
I love
Just-
Jason Rain's comment. VR accessories I have 17. VR accessories I use on a daily basis too. I
yeah.
do really appreciate that comment. I've gone off the deep end with VR accessories this year,
Oh
such that
God.
like I want a station in my couch where I can port in whatever's there, and then I've got a station next to my bed so I can port in whatever's there. And there's so many different arrangements for all this stuff because I don't want to have to tear up the station next to my bed in order to take my station on the go. I need a separate set of accessories to go into a bag, and I've got them all air tagged so I never
Right
lose
on.
any of these things. And it's absurd because also if you want any accessories ported in using HDMI link, you need to get one of these power delivery hubs that will work for the device that you want to port into your headset as well. So you have to have a battery pack that has two high output USB-C ports to power both your headset and the device you want to view inside your headset, whether it's your phone or your
Oh my Lord.
iPad or your Steam Deck or whatever. And we just had yesterday the ultra wide system just dropped for Apple Vision
Oh
Pro.
yes.
And
Yes.
my goodness, we'll get into that on VR download, but goodness, that's a game changer to
It's
have
really cool looking.
a super ultra wide high resolution display with your Apple Vision Pro wherever you go. Like that. The first thing I tried doing was putting my MacBook into a bag and then figuring out how do I keep it so that my MacBook never leaves the bag,
Hmm.
but I've got the ultra wide display, and it's not easy. Like you've got to go through all these multiple
Now,
steps to make that work.
now there's still all sorts of hoops that you have to jump through for all of this stuff to work. I mean, but the cool thing is just imagine we wouldn't have even been talking about this 2 years ago. I mean, the level at how fast all of this stuff is coming at us, we wouldn't have even talking about the ultra wide 2 months ago.
Yep.
So I mean, it's just great to see it all happening so quickly.
Well,
So,
it feels like, yeah, that's a great context on what it really feels like these systems are going down a checklist of all the
mhm,
things. Like you have the person who's out there saying, "Do I get a VR headset or do I get an ultra wide display PC?" And there's like they've got a pro and cons list, and the list of cons has always been bigger, but like they've been crossing these off one at a time, the things that keep you from using a VR headset. And the reason to get a VR headset has been slowly adding. Good. Prime Video, we're just talking about Rings of
mhm.
Power, didn't have local downloading on Quest headsets until last month, right? Let's move on here to
Oh,
our last subject here.
yes, and it's a good transition because we got Onakozi going, "Con," and that's more of a Star Trek reference, but it actually can be a reference to Metro. And I say that I'm not going to. Okay, so here we go, guys. As I start to talk about the Metro review, I may talk about some things that I intentionally left out of the review because I didn't want to give spoilers. Okay, story elements. So please be aware of that. If I slip up, I am not intending to spoil anything for you. It is just my excitement for the game and my rambling nature of talking here. So, Metro, wow, 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 wow. Okay. I love a good atmospheric, deep narrative adventure, especially in VR. And if you're like me and you love that TLDR right here, this is the game that you are looking for. Okay. So this is quite possibly the most atmospheric, story driven, narrative driven game I have played in years. And it truly does justice to the original Metro series. So if you are a fan of the Metro series, if you were worried about this not really feeling like it fit into that universe, I'm going to allay your fears right now. It is beautifully done. So, great story, great voice acting. Not going to try to give too many spoilers, but as far as the voice acting, I was talking to Ian as we were prepping the final parts of the review, and I was kind of having trouble getting this across. There is a point in this game where it started to become slightly emotionally attached to these characters, to these virtual beings that I was now interacting with and sharing this 12 and a half hours of my life with. And one of those virtual beings being a person who's very close to the character. And I'm like, again, I'm trying to weave around spoilers here. So um, she's taken, and you're taken, and you're separated, and you're made to watch something happening to her. And it got me to the point where my hands were shaking, and I'm in a virtual cage with controllers in my hands, but I'm making those hands grab the cage, and I'm shaking it, and I'm doing this subconsciously. And I realized that I was so into it, that I was so feeling for this character at this very particular moment, that I was physically trying to bust out of a cage that didn't exist and screaming into my living room at the top of my lungs for them to stop. I have not had that visceral of a reaction in a game in a long time. So so that right there, if you are into things where you can really start to feel like you become a part of a very deep story. And this is a story that deals with some sensitive subjects, some loss of a child, things of that nature, you know. So if you really want to get into it, Metro is what you're looking for.
Yeah, this is a big one from Vertigo Games, right? Very big studio to keep an eye on out there. They had, what was it? Was it After the Fall a little while
After the
back?
fall, they, yeah, I mean, obviously their biggest, you know, their biggest thing, you know. So, but it's just, I don't know, they are so good at atmospheric storytelling. You know, it is like, I, this is like, I don't know, the gameplay is good, so it's not all about story. It is, you know, there is a lot of stealth, there's a lot of action, there is a lot of, you know, jankiness as well. I mean, there is some things, and I'll get into that here in a minute. But what I really loved is that even in most of the stealthy parts, I could play the way that I wanted to play. It was very linear in its path, but it wasn't linear in its gameplay, in the fact that you choose stealth or you choose combat. And if you want to Leroy Jenkins it like I do and just run in, if you've got the ammo for it, go for it.
So we've got a couple questions here. I don't know if you can answer. So one I know I can answer for you. The other one I wonder if you know or if you can look it up while we're in here. But do you know if there's cross-buy from Quest to Rift
Quest
for?
to Rift, I believe, yes, there is cross-buy. I was reading that earlier, and
And then,
I'm 90% certain on that. I did want to add that. So
well, we should confirm that or check our article
yes,
for when we'll update that in the review, maybe just to make sure we've got that, because that is a purchase choice, right? Whether they want
that
to get
is.
it on Steam
Yeah,
or whether they want to get it on the Quest store based on that feature. And then the other one I can answer is Don played it through on Quest, I
I did.
believe, and
Well, I have also played it on PSVR too. We just, unfortunately, I had a problem with a capture card, so I wasn't able to capture footage of that. So we decided that we were going to go ahead and make this. So I can speak to a little bit of the difference between PSVR 2 and Quest, and I will do that here today. That was actually farther down in my notes, but we'll jump ahead. So essentially, it's the same game. I didn't notice very much difference performance wise. I mean, it did seem just a hair smoother in some of the higher populated areas. And then, of course, the biggest difference was, well, obviously the OLED, you know. So this is a very dark game, and it is a game that plays a lot with light and shadow and darkness, and you know, to create that atmosphere. And it was a lot spookier on PSVR 2. Okay, just having those true blacks, you know, really That flashlight just seemed like it beamed differently. The flashlight felt more believable and realistic to me. But overall, the gameplay experience that I got from Quest 3 was fantastic. And if I had to, and this is going to kind of go full circle back to what we were talking about with Gorilla Tag a minute ago. If I had to choose between the two, me personally, and again, this is a personal choice, I would choose the Quest. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, no wire. So again, if you are standing and playing this game, it is a very active game. There are lots of points where things are just coming at you from all angles, all directions, and you need to be able to put your head on a swivel and pivot at a moment's notice. There is a quick turn in the game. I hate that. I usually turn that off. It just feels unnatural to do a quick 45-degree turn if you're not using snap, or teleport or any of that kind of stuff, if you're trying to go fully immersive. So the wire was a big detraction. And even though the graphics were nicer, I don't know. I like the PSVR 2, but I am just a visual snob and I can't get past that dang Mura. It just kind of put this haze over everything and it just kind of detracted for me. So those are really my biggest reasons for why I would play it on Quest.
It's fascinating to see our commenters hearing you, right? Like they are echoing your decision making. They understand it. It goes, I think, all the way to the manufacturers.
Hmm.
This is what the platform companies have had to grapple with in deciding when and how to update their systems. You go back to OLED for the Quest 1, you go back to you've got OLED inside of the Apple Vision Pro, and then Valve supporting OLED as well. And you think like, do I really want to ship a headset
Hmm.
without True Black as a canvas for game developers to build, right? And this is one of those games where even the video you put out there with our tweet, with your review of just this body getting dragged off in the distance, it's spooky, and
Oh, I was about to talk about that too, so that's cool.
you totally get the flashlight has such a massive
Yeah.
effect on create adding to this fear. And but the idea that the flashlight is lighting up actual darkness
Yes.
is so significant. I have to bring up the HDR demo that David and I got in a little bit, but let's give your
No,
example
no, no.
here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it hasn't dropped on PC VR yet. So, I mean, it's all coming out on the same day. We just haven't received our review key for PC VR yet. I'm supposed to get that, I think, tomorrow. So, hoping to, and I'm not committing to it, but I'm hoping to do another graphics comparison, maybe side by side this time for all three systems. What I really can't wait is to play it on PC VR through Steam in a super high end headset, like something like the Pimax Crystal, or like where you have the micro OLED screens, the wider field of view, the 4K per eye. This is going to look nuts. But again, full circle, I still probably still just play it on Quest because it's just grab and go, put it on my head. And now that we're starting to see this new generation of games come out, this post 3S launch catalog that we're seeing with games like Batman, with games like, Metro that you guys are seeing for the first time today in our review. The graphics on Quest are really starting to blur the lines, between lower end PCVR anyway. So it's just getting to the point where it's diminishing returns. I'm okay to suffer a little bit lower end textures or a little bit of this for the comfort, the wireless, what I get from playing those games on Quest.
Yeah, so the problem this week with Don's avatar, for those of you that weren't at
Oh
the
yeah,
beginning, is for some reason it's not loading on the PC edition
I don't get it.
of our streaming platform. I am able to see Don
Yeah,
properly. He looks correct on our little mirror here,
I look
but
beautiful.
he's on V71 of Quest. I'm on V69 of Quest, and we're wondering if there's some reason that his V71 version of Quest isn't sending his avatar over into Canada onto the PC where it's getting streamed out to you. That's
I
our
think it
best theory
is.
here.
Yeah, I think it is like probably Meta has always been a little slower to update the PC side of things. So,
Hmm.
that could be part of it.
And there's,
But
of
yeah.
course, the next generation avatars coming around. I'm seeing people say they're blown away by Batman. And then I love the comment here saying from Sampler saying, I like playing Vertigo games on the sofa with the PSVR 2. It's kind of cozy,
Mhm.
resembles old school gaming.
No, I mean, I've been a fan of theirs ever since AZ Sunshine. I mean, it's like, this is like, and there's a lot of heavy influence from that game. I mean, in this, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of that. But anyway, so real quick, let me get back into it because I'm about to get to the parts that even me, as a veteran who doesn't care about horror games, I got a funny story here. So, all right, this is a very dark game, okay, as we were just talking about, and there are a couple of caveats for people who have two phobias that I did want to throw out there, and I do mention these in the review as well. So if you have problems with tight spaces, okay, if you do not like, if you weren't a kid that liked crawling through drainage ditches and tunnels and whatever you could find to just crawl through, you're probably not going to like this very much because there are scenes where you're having to crawl through these holes that the Nosalis has grown, and there's like roots coming down and they're very tight. So you definitely have a little bit of claustrophobia. There's a lot of vent crawling, a lot of that. And these vents are creepy. They've got like glowing mushrooms and spider webs and spider webs. And then there's spiders. And oh man, I have not in a long time wanted to rip a headset off of my face so fast until the first time one of these little green and black creepy crawly spiders crawled right across my face. And I wear the Bobo. I was telling you in the story beforehand, and I'm wearing my Bobo, and I wear it kind of loose, like kind of baseball cap style, without facial interface. And I literally instinctively just brushed, and I hit the side of my headset, and it like goes wonky, and it's halfway on, halfway off, about to hit the floor. My wife is sitting on the couch, just looking at me in bewilderment, going, "What the hell did you just see in your headset that made you want to do that?" So um, I don't show it in the video that we're showing here. This is just a 5-minute sequence. Go to the article. There is a little embed if you want to see what I'm talking about. It's a 1-minute sequence where you have to burn away a web and go through an area with a lot of spiders. But if you are arachnophobic, and you really are truly arachnophobic, this is a game that's going to be difficult for you. If you are claustrophobic, this is a game that might be a little difficult for you. So I just wanted to give those warnings.
It's funny, the people that are talking about the vents in Batman, there were vents in Alien Rogue Incursion as well.
Hmm.
Uh, I would love to see a lot more things done in the vents, right? That's the funny thing about vents is they
No
usually feel
events.
safe, right? Like
Yeah,
you only have a limited number of events that can happen in
not
the,
these.
yeah, oh gosh, oh go,
Mm-mm. Mm, I'm
no.
just gonna, yeah, not
All right.
always. Yeah.
Okay.
And say actually, because you asked me this when we were writing the review up, you asked me like my thoughts on something to compare to Batman. Better vents. That's all I'm going to say. I love Batman, but the vents, for some reason, when you crawl in a vent in Batman, and I don't know if you get the same, I don't think the scale is right. I've been saying that ever since my pre release demo, that there's something of weird about the scale in the vents in Batman. It just makes me feel like I'm 3 feet tall. and
Uh-oh. Does it sound
yeah.
like it sounds like we've got the audio from the video maybe playing over us in the
Oh,
background? Uh-oh. That would be a little distracting. So
there's a
sorry about
no
that if
doubt
that's what's
song
going
in the
on.
soundtrack. And I shouldn't have anything that has no doubt in it.
I think it was probably a joke over something you said
Oh,
that we didn't realize, but
oh, okay.
oh man, our commenters are out there. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but so apparently the audio isn't playing, so I don't know what's going on with our comments today. They're all over the board. I think they're doing whatever they can to not look at the news.
Hmm.
And so they're just putting whatever random thoughts are in their heads into our comments here. Yeah, so this is Don Hopper, same host you've always seen here on Gamescast, except he has been represented as avatarless. Is for
Don the
some
Gray.
reason his texture has been left in the virtual ether, and it is not loading on a PC in Canada. But that is Don over there. Um, oh gosh, yeah,
Okay,
there's so many
interesting.
fear games out there playing with various fears, and gosh, when these headsets start reading our brains a little bit more,
Oh
that's
gosh,
one
can
of
you
the things
imagine?
that's terrified me is over at Valve, they've got some brain reading.
EEG stuff,
uh
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you start reading a brain and start tuning the game for the fears that are actually being exhibited by your player as they're playing. That's where you die in real life if you die in VR type thing happening.
Or you take it a step further. It's something that I tested. You might have tested it. I don't know. Maybe you did, or maybe you didn't. A year or two ago, Next Mine. Did you ever play around with that? The little thing you
I
put on
tried
your
one of them.
Quest. Yeah,
I tried
I
one
did.
of
It was
them,
the
yeah.
shooting aliens with your mind thing was a little interesting. I think it was more of a visual cue without eye tracking, but it was an interesting thing. But yeah, I couldn't even imagine EEG like knowing that I'm scared and like amping or reducing the fear factor because of it. That when we get to headsets that are doing that kind of stuff, man, then we are truly living the sci-fi dream. I mean,
So Onakazi is suggesting that's really far off, but I will point out that at MetaConnect last month, um, I witnessed and have video of a VR developer out there putting on the wristband that Meta had, and just went right onto their wrist and sensed the signals that were passing through his arm. He put the armband behind his back, and then started doing pinches behind his back, and had that interact with the game that he was seeing floating right in front of him. So that is a very long line of research over there at Meta. They, 2 years ago, said that they would probably have a product within 5 years, I think is
mhm,
what the time scale that they were on for putting that into reality. And their early days of it actually rolling out. You've got double pinch on the latest Apple Watches, I think, to answer calls. You've got turning your head left and right to say no to calls, or
mhm.
nodding to answer them. Those aren't those that's starting to verge on mind reading in consumer hardware today, in done in various ways. Uh, Very, very different time for personal computing ahead for
Oh,
us.
dude. I
Anything else
mean,
you want to say about Metro?
I mean, I said a lot of the good, and I did promise that, I would talk about warts and all. So, is the game perfect? No. Did I score it 100% perfect? No, I gave it 4.5. I mean, I really wanted to push towards that five. I was just so ready to give this a five, but there are some glitches. You're gonna get some things like twitchy ragdoll from time to time, enemies disappearing into the floor after they die. There is this one weird thing, and that's just me. I'm a visual guy. Like on the Quest version, it wasn't as apparent on the PSVR 2 version, but the whiskers on the Nasalis creatures, they just kind of weirdly hover above the model. It's kind of like off putting, and I think the one thing though that I would really love to see Vertigo and all other developers. I know I've kind of made many rants about this on this show before. Solidify your worlds, guys. It is so important to present players with a solid VR world. I mean, we are inhabiting a virtual space. Therefore, if it is a table, my hand should not pass through it. If I try to pick up an object, as much as possible, I should be able to pick up that object. If there's a drawer, I should be able to open that drawer. I mean, it's just little things like that that really bring it home and would have really elevated this to me to be almost perfect. Now, the other thing is that this game is a little repetitive, and we do see that right now. I'm seeing that a lot in a lot of VR and MR titles that, developers are trying to push for length. I know that's always been a big sore subject with VR is that, oh, well, they're tech demos, they're short, they're this, we want long gameplay. Well, I got 12 and a half hours in this game. But out of that 12 and a half hours, I'd say probably 8 of it were spent exploring original content, not backtracking, not seeing the same assets used over and over again. It literally, at one point, my wife was side seat gaming with me, which she does sometimes, and she did. She made the comment. She was like, "It just seems like you're just walking through the same tunnel over and over and over and over again, and doing the same things in the same sequence." It's like, okay, well, here's a big story. Now let's walk through this tunnel. Now let's get on this train car. Let's shoot the things as they come at. Now let's get off the train car. So just mixing it up a little bit would have really also kind of push this into perfection for me. But close enough, as John Carmack said, close enough. And I got to tell you, Batman, I can't wait to see Alien. I can't wait to see Behemoth. The back half of 2024 and the beginning of 2025 are just looking stellar for VR and VR gaming. And guys, the best is yet to come.
Yeah, I appreciate all that context. Alien Rogue Incursion, for people that weren't familiar with our discussion last week, go check out that discussion. But I'm a little worried about a delay on Alien Rogue Incursion, at least on some platforms. Little hints given during my playthrough sort of suggested that there might be a statement or something coming there for a delay of some kind, but we obviously have to wait to see what they actually say there. And then Behemoth, I think, is the one that is the next one on everyone's wish list that everyone wants to know. I know Henry, I think, tried it out earlier this
at
year.
Gamescom.
I believe I should get some hands-on at some point with it myself. And
I can't wait.
we'll have the latest for you on that one, because that one is a contender, as we understand it, for Game of the Year potentially. Yeah, the thing that gets me about you saying like that we're chock full of these good experiences, yes we are, but also it still barely scratches the surface compared
big
to
time.
flat gaming. And people will burn through. One of the comments I loved earlier in the show, I want to call it out, was the person who said, was it Mindweaver, I think, was saying that they've had this problem with Half-Life Alyx where they could sense the end of the game approaching, and so they stopped playing or start playing it in smaller bits because they don't want it to end.
I had that with Metro. I had
Oh,
that with Metro. I could sense that the end game was coming, and I started thinking, is there anything else I can do? I wanted to stay in the world longer. Oh my God, that is so awesome that he said that.
yeah, that's a really interesting design idea to contemplate, I suppose, for the Batman Arkham Shadow devs out there. Ryan Payton, if you've clicked into this show, and one of the things I talked to Payton about is he hinted that they were considering a new game plus mode for Batman Arkham Shadow, but they weren't ready to commit to them adding that. But that's exactly the type of thing. I've been fascinated by the division over Asgard's Wrath 2. We had our review of it, was very low on the scale compared to basically the rest of the market. But I've seen people over this year point out what our reviewer pointed out, was that it felt repetitive, and it felt too repetitive, especially you're loping across this desert on various creatures and just doing these fetch quests. If you have the thing that I got across in the Batman thing is 4-year development cycle
Yeah.
for a game. And then, that old joke, right? 90% of you get through 90% of your development, and then you've got the remaining 90% to do.
Right.
Is the joke. The last 10% ends up being another 90% of the game. That's like the time that gets sucked out of a bunch of these VR developers' development time. Like they don't have the team, they don't have the finances to say, actually, we're going to spend a whole nother year on this, or a whole nother 6 months to get everything perfect and add in this whole extra layer. So I love this discussion here of, how do you get a game that just, it feels amazing in the first 6 hours, and then you give it another 20 hours in the last part of the game that just doesn't feel repetitive? How do you add in another 20 hours to the game that keep people in there like they're begging for, but they don't feel like they're just treading over the same spaces, they're doing the same activities again and again? it's got to be a massive, very, very hard thing for devs to
It's
figure
a
out.
tough nut to crack. I mean, I think that's why a lot of times you see, other things, more personalized things like crafting tasks and things like that. I mean, adding stuff like that into the game really helps fill those voids, but that's kind of difficult when you're in a linear game like a Batman or a Metro that has, just a solid path that you're meant to follow. So, I mean, that's the difference between having that open world type game and linear. So,
So while we're on this subject, we've got a triangle strategy that we need to check out
yes.
soon, and I'm very, very curious to see how that plays. There's this whole category of sort of floating spatial object games,
Hmm.
cubism, that play in a space, and I think I talked about it last week, but I got into VR with James O'Loughlin, one of our viewers, and he was on his Vision Pro, and I was on my Vision Pro, and he had his Steam Deck, or no, his Steam PC up here as a window. So I watched him playing Silent Hill 2, I think it was, and then I pulled up Resident Evil 4 over here on my Steam Deck, and I was streaming my mirror to him. He's streaming his mirror to me. And I want those types of game experiences as well as the floating digital objects like Demio and other games like that. I want those games to fill the gaps
Yeah.
more and more and more between these killer single player releases where you're just going for 12 hours off on your own. And then when you get back from your lonely journey where you've had this exhausting thing, you get back to the table and you're like, man, oh, those spiders, right? And you're
Talk
playing
about
a
spiders.
board game. All right. Anything else you want to close? Any comments to talk about? Thank you to all
N-
of our commenters: Arlen, Jack, Onakazi, Mindweaver.
Yeah.
Let's see, Opzar. We got a lot of commenters.
You got
All
a
of our
lot of,
silent viewers
yeah.
out there. Thank you for tuning in. Our members and patrons. Anything else to talk about here, Don?
Nah, I mean, I just closing out that conversation and then on to the outro here. But Arlen, as always, with his great comments, not every game can or should be Skyrim.
Yeah.
So,
So thank you to Mindweaver saying that they're noticing how few thumbs up this chat has. We encourage you to come back on Thursdays for VR Download. We have quite an audience that pops in for that conversation on a weekly basis. We would love to see more of those people over here, as well as just new audiences out here with our Gamescast and our games coverage. We're going to try to do a lot more into next year. We want to say thank you to our members and our patrons for supporting the work that we do. We have a very dedicated team who know the ins and outs of VR games, VR accessories, the hardware platforms, and we depend on our audience for just catching the questions we don't ask, filling in the gaps for us on things we couldn't remember. You even filled in the cross-buy question for us today that
absolutely.
we couldn't pull up while we were in VR. And yeah, please thank you to all of our viewers for hitting that like button, commenting. We do read all the comments after the show as well. And be back on Thursday with David Heaney. Look for more work from Don Hopper, and even check out that short we've got out there from Shola. We put out a short this
Oh, it
week.
was
We might
awesome.
even, yeah, first short in 4 years here that we've been able to put out there. So thank you, all of you. We'll see you in the future.